This message was not meant to find everyone. If you are watching this right now, alone, something has already shifted in the unseen realm. This is not coincidence. This is not algorithm. This is not chance. There are moments when God speaks loudly to crowds, and moments when he whispers to one soul at a time. This is one of those moments. You were not chosen because you are perfect. You were chosen because you were willing to endure what others ran from. Before wealth comes, there is separation. Before abundance, there is silence. Before elevation, there is isolation. And that is why God said, "Watch this alone." Not because others are unworthy, but because this instruction is personal. What you are about to hear is not motivation. It is not fantasy. It is not ego. It is a warning and a promise. Now listen carefully. Why this message could only reach you. There are millions of people praying for money, thousands dreaming of wealth, countless souls asking God for abundance, but very few are prepared to carry it. You see, God does not choose the loudest. He does not choose the most confident. He does not choose the most visible. He chooses the ones who survived without applause. You have lived through seasons where no one clapped for you, where your progress was invisible, where your sacrifices went unnoticed, and still, you stayed. That is why this message found you. Because being chosen is not about what you want. It is about what you can handle. Many people would collapse under the weight of sudden wealth. They would lose themselves. They would worship money instead of purpose. God does not bless recklessly. He observes. He watches how you respond when you are ignored, you are delayed, you are underestimated, you are alone, and you pass tests you didn't even know were exams. You kept integrity when no one was watching. You held on when quitting would have been easier. You endured confusion without becoming bitter. That is rare, and rarity attracts selection. This is why your life has felt different, why your path never matched those around you, why shortcuts never worked for you. You were not being punished. You were being prepared. Because God does not elevate character later. He requires it before elevation. And now comes the part few people understand. There is a moment when God stops testing and starts transitioning. That moment is usually quiet. No fireworks, no announcement, no public confirmation. Just a subtle inner pull, a restlessness, a sense that something is about to change. If you've been feeling that lately, that heaviness mixed with anticipation, that is not anxiety. That is alignment. God does not choose people randomly for wealth. He chooses assignments, not bank accounts. And your assignment requires resources. You are not being positioned to become wealthy for ego. You are being positioned to fund impact. But first, separation. That is why this message could only reach you alone. Because isolation filters distraction, and clarity only comes when noise leaves. There are people in your life who cannot go where you're going, not because they are bad, but because they are not built for the next level. God isolates before he elevates. Every major transformation in Scripture began in solitude. Moses alone on the mountain, Joseph alone in prison, David alone in the fields, before influence comes in visibility. And that is where you have been. Let me tell you something important. If you were not chosen, this message would irritate you. You would click away. You would feel skeptical. You would mock it. But instead, you stayed. Because something in you recognized this moment. Not logically, spiritually. Your soul knows when it is being addressed directly. And now comes the responsibility. Being chosen does not mean wealth is automatic. It means instruction is coming. It means your obedience matters more than ever. Your focus matters. Your discipline matters. Because what God is about to release can either elevate you or expose you. And he would not speak to you now if you were not capable of carrying it. But hear this clearly. Not everyone who is chosen accepts the call. Some get afraid. Some self-sabotage. Some retreat back into comfort. That decision is still ahead of you. And that is why this message did not come as celebration, but as awakening. In the next chapter, you will understand the silent signal that proves you were selected long before you realized it. It has been showing up in your life repeatedly. You felt it, but you didn't know what it meant. Now you will. Stay with me. Do not rush this. And do not share this yet. This is still between you and God. Before you go, let me share something special with you. If this message brought you even a small sense of peace, reassurance, or hope. I don't want you to walk away carrying everything alone. Today only, I'm releasing a gentle gift called the Divine Breakthrough Suite. It was created for moments when life feels stuck, heavy, or uncertain. A spiritual resource meant to remind you that God still opens doors, even when we can't see how. Along with this gift, I'm also opening access to a members area, a calm, welcoming space where you can receive ongoing encouragement, reflection, and support. It's a safe place to breathe, to feel understood, and to continue the journey that began with this video. This opportunity is available only today, for those who feel called right now. Click the first pinned comment to redeem. Sometimes the smallest step brings more comfort, strength, and clarity than we expect. Receive what's being offered to you, gently, in your own time. The silent call that separated you from the crowd. Long before you ever thought about abundance, before you imagined change, before you even had the words for what you were feeling, the call had already begun. Not with a voice, not with a vision, not with a dramatic sign, but with distance. You may not have noticed it at first. It showed up subtly, in moments that felt confusing, even painful. You started feeling out of place in rooms where you once belonged. Conversations that used to excite you began to feel empty. People you loved no longer understood you, and you wondered, what's wrong with me? Nothing was wrong with you. You were being called out. The silent call does not announce itself. It separates quietly. While others were chasing noise, approval, and comfort, you were being pulled inward, toward stillness, toward reflection, toward something deeper you couldn't explain. This is how God marks those He intends to use differently. He removes their taste for shallow things. You may have noticed, you couldn't tolerate fake connections anymore. Drama exhausted you. Meaningless routines drained you. Small thinking frustrated you. That wasn't arrogance. That was alignment beginning. Here is a truth few people are told. When God is preparing someone for greater responsibility, He first makes them uncomfortable with the ordinary. Not dissatisfied in a greedy way, but unsettled in the soul. You tried to ignore it. You told yourself to be grateful, to stop overthinking, to just be normal. But the call didn't stop, because it wasn't coming from your mind. It was coming from your spirit. And spirits recognize when they no longer belong where they are. This silent call often looks like loss. You may have lost relationships, momentum, confidence, time, direction. And from the outside, it looked like regression. But in the unseen realm, it was extraction. God was gently pulling you out of systems, patterns, and identities that could not survive the next level. Some people stay crowded because they are meant to blend in. Others are separated because they are meant to stand out later. You are not behind. You are set apart. Think back. There were moments when you felt alone even among people. Moments when you felt unseen. Moments when you felt like you were carrying questions no one else had. That loneliness was not abandonment. It was invitation. Because the call does not compete with noise. It waits until silence has room. This is why God didn't shout at you. He waited until life itself quieted around you. And here's the part that changes everything. The silent call is not given to everyone. Most people never experience it. They stay busy. They stay distracted. They stay surrounded. But those chosen for impact are separated early. Not to punish them, but to prepare their inner world. Because outer wealth without inner depth destroys people. God does not risk that. You see, wealth is not just money. Wealth is exposure, influence, pressure, decision-making, responsibility. And before God entrusts someone with resources that can affect many lives, He tests them with loneliness. Because if you can survive isolation without losing yourself, you can survive abundance without losing your soul. That is what the silent call was measuring. And you passed more than you realize. You didn't harden. You didn't become cruel. You didn't lose compassion. Even when life stripped things away, you still cared. That alone is rare. Now understand this clearly. The silent call is the first confirmation of selection. It is the moment God says, "This one cannot grow in the crowd." So He moves you, away from familiar applause, away from borrowed beliefs, away from borrowed dreams, towards something that will eventually be your own. If you are listening to this and something inside you feels exposed, if you feel seen in a way that's uncomfortable but relieving, that's because this chapter is not information, it's recognition. Your soul remembers the moment the call began, even if your mind couldn't name it. And now that you know what it was, you also need to know what comes next. Because separation is never the end. It is the threshold. Why God asked you to be alone right now. There is a reason this moment required privacy. Not secrecy, not fear, but focus. When God is about to speak something directional, He removes witnesses, not because the message is weak, but because the listener must be undivided. You see, there are messages meant to inspire crowds, and messages meant to reposition a life. This is the second kind. If others were around you right now, their presence would interfere, not intentionally, but energetically. Opinions would dilute clarity. Distractions would fragment attention. Their expectations would blur what God wants to make personal. That is why you were asked to be alone. Because this is not about agreement, it is about alignment. God has always worked this way. He speaks publicly when the instruction is simple. But when the instruction will change identity, He speaks privately. Think about it. Abram became Abraham alone. Jacob became Israel alone. Saul became Paul alone. Transformation begins in isolation because identity cannot be negotiated with a crowd. And what is being addressed in you right now is not behavior. It is self-perception. Here is something few people realize. Noise keeps people small. Not because noise is evil, but because it constantly pulls attention outward. And what God is doing in you right now requires your attention to turn inward. Because the next level of your life will not be built on approval, validation, reassurance. It will be built on conviction, and conviction is formed in silence. You may have noticed that God has been gradually reducing the number of voices in your life. People stopped calling. Conversations shortened. Connections faded. At first, it hurt. You wondered if you did something wrong, if you were being forgotten, if you were losing relevance. But this was not loss. This was intentional narrowing. Because when too many voices speak, direction becomes impossible. God did not remove people to punish you. He removed interference to prepare you. Right now, something fragile is being formed inside you. Not weak, fragile. Like a seed before roots form. Like a thought before language. Like a calling before structure. If this moment were exposed too early, it could be damaged. That is why God said, alone. Because protection often looks like separation. Let me be very clear. This instruction is not about isolation forever. It is about separation for clarity. Soon enough, your life will become visible again. Your voice will carry weight. Your decisions will affect others. But before that happens, God needs to ensure that what guides you is His voice, not echoes. You may be wondering why this feels heavy, why this moment feels serious, why your spirit feels alert instead of excited. Because this is not entertainment. This is responsibility approaching. And responsibility always feels weighty before it feels rewarding. Here is a truth that will anchor you. God never speaks to impress you. He speaks to prepare you. If this message makes you reflective instead of euphoric, that is confirmation you are receiving it correctly. Because fantasy inflates ego. Instruction grounds purpose. Being alone right now is also about honesty. When no one is watching, you cannot perform. You cannot pretend. You cannot mirror expectations. And God does not bless the mask. He blesses the real self. That is why He waited until you were alone, so you could listen without pretending to understand, so you could feel without explaining, so you could receive without defending yourself. There are questions rising in you right now. Quiet ones. Questions about what you've tolerated, what you've settled for, what you've postponed, what you've ignored. Those questions are not condemnation. They are activation, because the next phase of your life will require honesty, with yourself first. If others were present, you might laugh this off, minimize it, seek validation, look for agreement. But alone, there is nowhere to hide, and that is where truth becomes usable. This moment is a checkpoint. God is not rushing you. He is asking, are you willing to listen without interruption? Are you willing to receive without witnesses? Are you willing to follow without applause? These questions cannot be answered out loud. They are answered internally, and your continued presence here is already an answer. But being alone right now is not about fear of others. It is about trust between you and God. Trust that He can speak clearly. Trust that you can hear. Trust that you will respond. And that trust is the foundation of everything that comes next. Because soon, God will begin to show you patterns you missed before. Connections between events, reasons for delays, meaning behind losses. But that revelation requires space, and space requires silence. Before you go, I want to leave you with something gentle and meaningful. If this message brought you comfort, reassurance, or a quiet sense of hope, please know it didn't come by accident, and you don't have to carry what you're feeling alone. Today only, I'm releasing a special gift called the Divine Breakthrough Suite. It's a resource created to help you breathe again when life feels heavy. A reminder that even in difficult seasons, God still opens paths, restores peace, and brings clarity one step at a time. Along with this gift, I'm also opening access to a members area, a calm, welcoming space where you can continue receiving encouragement, reflection, and support. It's a safe environment, filled with care, meant to gently walk with you beyond this video. This opportunity is available only today, for those who feel this message in their hearts right now. Click the first pinned comment to redeem. Sometimes what we receive in a quiet moment becomes the strength we need for tomorrow. Take this step gently. It may be more than you expect. The hidden pattern that always precedes the chosen. There is a pattern that appears again and again in the lives of those who are eventually elevated. Most people never see it while they're inside it. They only recognize it after the transition. But once you see it, everything changes. This pattern is not obvious. It does not look like progress. It rarely feels like blessing. In fact, most people mistake it for failure. The pattern begins with pressure without explanation. You were pushed into situations you didn't ask for. You were stretched beyond what felt reasonable. You carried responsibilities that felt unfair. And no matter how hard you tried to do the right thing, relief did not come when you expected it. You prayed, you waited, you adjusted. Still, delay. This was not neglect. This was conditioning. Before God expands a person's influence, He expands their capacity. And capacity is never built through ease. It is built through prolonged uncertainty, repeated disappointment, unanswered questions, quiet endurance. This is where many people give up. They assume something is wrong. They believe they missed their moment. They conclude that they are not chosen. But the truth is the opposite. Those who are chosen experience compression before expansion. Just like a seed must be pressed into darkness before it breaks open. Look closely at your past. You were placed in environments that demanded more from you than they gave back. You gave effort without recognition. You stayed faithful without reward. You showed up without guarantees. And yet, you didn't lose your sense of right and wrong. That matters more than you know. Here is the hidden part of the pattern. God watches how a person behaves when outcomes are delayed. Not when things are going well. Not when prayers are answered quickly. But when effort and reward are separated by time. Because wealth does not just multiply resources, it multiplies character. If impatience, entitlement, or bitterness exist beneath the surface, abundance will expose them violently. So God tests quietly first. Another part of the pattern is misunderstanding. People misunderstood your intentions. Your silence was misread. Your boundaries were questioned. You were judged without context. And you learned something painful but important. Not everyone will understand the version of you that is still being formed. This is not rejection. This is filtration. Because influence requires resilience against misunderstanding. You may have noticed that solutions often arrived late. Just late enough that you had to confront your fears. Late enough that you had to rely on faith instead of control. That was intentional. Because control must be loosened before trust can deepen. And trust is the currency of the next level. Another sign in the pattern is being overlooked. Opportunities went to others. Recognition bypassed you. Your name was not mentioned, and yet behind the scenes you were growing stronger, more aware, more grounded, more discerning. God does not rush exposure. Exposure without stability destroys people, so He allows seasons of invisibility to stabilize the inner world. Let me tell you something important. If your life feels like it has been moving in slow motion while others sped ahead, that does not mean you were behind. It means your foundation was being reinforced. Fast growth with weak roots leads to collapse. Slow growth with deep roots leads to permanence, and permanence is what God values. You also experienced loss without explanation. Things you thought would last, didn't. Plans dissolved, connections ended, and there was no clear reason. But every removal created space. Space for something new that could not coexist with what was there before. This is the part people fear, because loss feels final. But in this pattern, loss is surgical. Nothing removed was meant to survive the next season. If you are honest, you can see it now. Every delay redirected you. Every disappointment refined you. Every quiet season deepened you. This was not chaos. This was design. And here is the most important part of the pattern. Just before elevation, there is usually a moment of inner surrender. A moment when you stop striving. Stop forcing outcomes. Stop demanding timelines. Not because you gave up, but because you trusted. That is when alignment locks in. Because surrender is not weakness. It is agreement with timing. You may be very close to that moment now. You feel less desperate. Less reactive, more still. That stillness is not emptiness. It is readiness. People who are not chosen often burn out early. They push too hard. They chase validation. They rush exposure. But those chosen are slowed down on purpose. So when acceleration comes, they don't lose themselves. Your struggles were not random. They were sequenced. Placed exactly where they needed to be to shape judgment, humility, patience, and discernment. Traits that money cannot buy. Traits that must exist before money arrives. If this chapter is stirring emotion in you, if you feel both grief and relief, that's because you're finally seeing your past accurately. Not as wasted time, not as punishment, but as preparation. The pain, the delay, and the isolation. Nothing was accidental. There are seasons that feel unnecessarily heavy. Not dramatic enough to be called tragedy. Not hopeful enough to be called progress. Just heavy. This was one of those seasons for you. Pain that lingered longer than expected. Delays that made no sense. Isolation that felt imposed rather than chosen. And the most difficult part was not the pain itself. It was the lack of explanation. You kept asking, why is this taking so long? Why does it feel like I'm walking alone? Why does relief keep stopping just short of arriving? Silence. And silence, when misunderstood, can feel like rejection. But this silence had purpose. Here is a truth most people never hear. God uses pain, delay, and isolation together only when something irreversible is being formed. Each one alone teaches a lesson. Together, they reshape identity. Pain softens the heart. Delay trains patience. Isolation removes dependency. And when these three converge, a person becomes internally independent. Not arrogant, but anchored. That anchoring is essential, because what is coming next will require stability under pressure. Let's talk about the pain. Your pain was not random suffering. It was precision discomfort. It touched areas where you still relied on outcomes for worth, where you still hoped others would validate your effort, where you still waited for permission to believe in yourself. Pain exposes attachments, and God removes attachments gently at first, but firmly if necessary. Not to hurt you, but to free you. Now the delay. Delay is not denial. Delay is calibration. You wanted movement. God wanted maturity. You wanted answers. God wanted discernment. Every time you felt ready, something stalled. Not because you were wrong, but because you were early. And early access to power is more dangerous than late arrival. So God slowed time around you. He allowed you to feel the discomfort of waiting until waiting no longer controlled your emotions. That is mastery. Then came isolation. This was the hardest part. People drifted. Support weakened. Even encouragement felt distant. You were left with your thoughts and your faith. And at first, that felt cruel. But isolation has one hidden gift. It reveals who you are without reinforcement. Who you are when no one is clapping. Who you are when no one is checking on you. Who you are when no one is expecting anything from you. That version of you is the real one. And that is the version God prepares for responsibility. Here is something critical to understand. If God were to elevate someone who still needs constant reassurance, abundance would destroy them. So he removes reassurance first. Not forever, just long enough. You may have noticed that during this season, your prayers changed. They became quieter, less demanding, more honest. You stopped asking for signs and started asking for strength. That shift matters. Because the kind of person who can carry wealth is not the one who demands outcomes, but the one who can remain steady without them. Another sign that nothing was accidental. You learned discernment through disappointment. You learned who meant well but lacked capacity, who supported verbally but vanished practically, who stayed consistent when nothing was gained. This wasn't bitterness training. It was clarity training. You are now less naive, but more compassionate, less desperate, but more discerning. That balance is rare. And pain taught you humility without breaking you. Delay taught you patience without numbing you. Isolation taught you independence without hardening you. That combination is intentional. It creates a person who can receive much without becoming controlled by it. If you are honest, you can feel the shift now. You are not who you were before this season. You react slower. You think deeper. You choose more carefully. You don't need to prove as much. That is growth, and growth always precedes transition. There is something else few people talk about. Pain, delay, and isolation often intensify right before a season ends. Not because things are getting worse, but because the final layers are being shed, like pressure before release, like silence before sound. If things have felt especially heavy recently, that may not be a sign of regression. It may be a sign of closure. God often waits until a person no longer needs rescue before he brings relief, because relief should enhance strength, not replace it. And you are stronger now. You may not feel powerful, but you are steady, and steadiness is more valuable. This season did not disqualify you, it qualified you. Not everyone survives prolonged uncertainty without losing faith. You did. Not perfectly, not without doubt, but without surrendering your integrity. That matters more than flawless belief. Let this settle in you. Nothing you went through was wasted. Not the tears, not the confusion, not the quiet nights questioning everything. All of it was shaping your inner framework. So when the external changes arrive, and they will, you won't collapse under them. You'll stand. Before you go, please let me offer you something with care. If this message brought you a sense of calm, reassurance, or reminded you that you are not forgotten, I want you to know this support doesn't have to end here. Today only, I'm sharing a gentle gift called the Divine Breakthrough Suite. It was created for moments when life feels uncertain, a quiet spiritual resource to help you feel guided, strengthened, and reminded that God still moves, even when answers feel slow. Alongside this gift, I'm also opening access to a members area, a peaceful, supportive space where you can continue receiving encouragement and comfort. It's a safe place, filled with understanding, meant to walk with you beyond this video and help you feel less alone. This is a limited-time opportunity, available only today, for those who feel called right now. Click the first pinned comment to redeem. Sometimes a small step opens the door to much more peace, strength, and clarity than we expect. Receive what's being offered to you, gently, and at your own pace. The invisible test that decides who can prosper. There is a test that almost no one talks about. It does not look like a test. There are no clear instructions, no warning that you are being evaluated. And yet, this test determines everything. Most people fail it, not because they are bad, but because they never realize it exists. This is the test of stewardship before increase. Before God ever releases more into someone's life, He watches what they do with what feels small, limited, or insufficient. Not just money, but energy, time, attention, integrity, responsibility. Because prosperity is not about how much you receive, it is about how well you manage weight, and weight increases gradually. Here is where many people misunderstand abundance. They think wealth changes behavior. In reality, wealth reveals behavior. If someone is careless with little, they will be reckless with much. If someone is resentful in lack, they will be entitled in abundance. So God watches quietly first. This invisible test often shows up like this. You are given responsibility without authority, effort without immediate reward, trust without recognition, and how you respond tells everything. Do you become bitter? Do you cut corners? Do you lose integrity when no one notices? Or do you remain consistent, even when it feels pointless? You may not realize this, but you have been under observation. Not judgment, observation. God has been watching how you treat people who cannot help you, handle disappointment without explanation, respond when your effort seems invisible, speak when outcomes are uncertain. These moments are far more revealing than public success. Let me tell you something crucial. The test is not about perfection. It is about direction. Do you grow wiser under pressure or more reactive? Do you become more discerning or more defensive? Do you protect your character when no one would blame you for losing it? These answers determine access. Many people pray for open doors while failing the quiet tests behind closed ones. They ask for increase while resisting discipline. They want expansion without responsibility. God does not work that way. He releases more only when more will not corrupt. You may have noticed that opportunities came close, then disappeared. Not because you were rejected, but because timing was still aligning. God will not promote someone whose inner world cannot sustain exposure, so he waits. And waiting is part of the test. Another part of this invisible test is obedience without clarity. You felt prompted to do things that didn't make logical sense. To let go, to slow down, to stop chasing, to say no when yes would have been easier. And sometimes, obedience cost you comfort. But that obedience was noted. Every time you chose principle over impulse, you passed another layer of the test. Here is where it becomes personal. You didn't always get it right. There were moments of frustration, moments of doubt, moments of exhaustion. But you returned, you recalibrated, you didn't abandon who you are. That matters, because resilience after weakness is more powerful than never struggling at all. The invisible test also examines motivation. Why do you want more? Is it to escape pain? To prove worth? To silence insecurity? Or is it to build, support, protect, and give? Motivation shapes outcome. God can trust resources to someone whose desire is impact, not escape. You may have noticed your desires shifting. Less about status, less about comparison, more about peace, more about meaning. That shift is not accidental. It is preparation. Because when purpose leads, provision follows safely. Let me say this clearly. If you are still here, still listening, still open, you are passing the test. Not because you are flawless, but because you are teachable. Because you reflect instead of react. Because you value alignment over applause. Most people never get this far. They quit internally long before life changes externally. But you stayed. And staying is proof of capacity. This invisible test does not last forever. It ends when a person demonstrates consistency without supervision. When discipline becomes internal. When integrity no longer depends on reward. That is when God knows. This one can be trusted. And when that moment arrives, change happens quickly. Not gradually. Quickly. Because preparation took time, but release does not need to. If you feel like something is about to shift, but you can't explain how, that's often the sign that the test is nearing completion. Not because you asked louder, but because you became steadier. The spiritual block that is about to be broken. There is a block that does not come from lack of effort. It does not come from intelligence. It does not come from opportunity. And it does not come from worth. This block forms quietly, often in people who have endured too much without resolution. It is not visible, but it is powerful. And for a long time, it has been standing between you and flow. And this block is not punishment. It is protection that stayed too long. At some point in your life, you learned how to survive by holding back. You learned to expect less, hope cautiously, trust partially, prepare for disappointment. Those strategies saved you once. But what saves you in one season can limit you in the next. And God does not break blocks violently. He dissolves them when you are ready. This spiritual block often forms after repeated delays. Not one disappointment, but many. Not one unanswered prayer, but years of waiting. Over time, something subtle happens. You still believe, but you stop expecting. You still pray, but without anticipation. You still move forward, but with an invisible brake engaged. This is not lack of faith. This is self-protection. God understands this. He does not judge it. But there comes a moment when protection must be replaced with permission, because what once shielded you now restricts you. Here is how you know this block exists. Opportunities appear, but you hesitate. Doors open, but you delay. Ideas surface, but you question them into silence. Not because you can't, but because part of you fears disappointment more than you desire fulfillment. That fear is understandable, but it is no longer necessary. This block also shows up as overthinking. You analyze instead of act. You wait for certainty that never comes. You replay past failures as warnings. And without realizing it, you postpone movement. God does not condemn this either, but he does not bless paralysis. So he begins to apply gentle pressure. That pressure may look like restlessness. You can't stay where you are, but you don't know where to go. Comfort feels dull. Familiarity feels heavy. That discomfort is not confusion. It is the block weakening. Another sign the block is about to break. Old fears surface unexpectedly. Thoughts you believed you had overcome return. Memories resurface. Doubts whisper. This is not regression. This is release. Like sediment rising before water clears. The block breaks when one thing changes. Your relationship with trust. Not trust in outcomes, but trust in God's timing within action. At some point, you stop waiting to feel ready, and you decide to move while still uncertain. That moment is powerful, because readiness is not a feeling, it is a decision. God is not waiting for you to feel fearless. He is waiting for you to feel willing to try again, willing to open your hands, willing to expect without guarantee. That willingness breaks the block. Let me tell you something important. Abundance does not respond to desperation. It responds to alignment. And alignment happens when fear no longer leads. You may feel emotional as you read this. Not sad, but exposed. That's because this block has been protecting you for a long time. Letting it go feels like vulnerability. But vulnerability is not weakness. It is availability. Here is the truth most people never hear. God will not force abundance on someone who is still bracing for loss. So he waits. Until the brace loosens. Until the grip softens. Until the heart reopens. You are very close to that moment. You can feel it. A quiet readiness. A calm courage. A sense that holding back costs more than trying again. That is not recklessness. That is wisdom maturing. Fourth seam. When this block breaks, things do not explode instantly. They flow. Conversations change. Ideas connect. Opportunities align. Not dramatically, naturally. As if resistance was removed. Because it was. This is why the pressure has been increasing. This is why restlessness has grown. This is why you feel pulled forward without a clear map. The block is weakening, and God is not asking you to leap blindly. He is asking you to step honestly. Before you go, please allow me to offer you something with love and care. If this message spoke to your heart, if it brought you even a small sense of peace or reassurance, I want you to know you don't have to carry this season alone. Today only, I'm releasing a gentle gift called the Divine Breakthrough Suite. It's something I prepared to help you feel supported during times when answers feel slow. A spiritual resource meant to remind you that God still makes a way, even quietly, one step at a time. Along with this gift, I'm also opening access to a members area, a calm, safe space where you can receive continued encouragement, comfort, and guidance. It's an extension of what you felt in this video, a place to feel understood and supported as you move forward. This is a limited opportunity, available only today, for those who feel this message deeply. Click the first pinned comment to redeem. Sometimes a small step opens the door to more peace, clarity, and strength than we ever expected. Receive this gently. It may be exactly what your heart needs right now. The internal shift that comes before external wealth. External change never arrives first. It never has. Before circumstances move, something inside must realign. Before resources increase, perception must mature. Before wealth appears outwardly, identity must shift inwardly. This is the part many people miss. They wait for money to change how they feel about themselves. But God waits for how you see yourself to change before releasing money. This internal shift is not about confidence. Confidence can be fragile. It rises with success and collapses with loss. What God develops instead is self-trust anchored in purpose, a quiet knowing of who you are, independent of outcome. That is what allows abundance to enter safely. At some point in your life, you learn to associate peace with stability, predictable income, familiar routines, known limitations. Even if those limitations were painful, they were known, and the unknown can feel threatening. So when expansion approaches, the nervous system reacts. Not because growth is bad, but because it is unfamiliar. This is where the internal shift begins. You stop asking, "Can I handle more?" and start asking, "Who am I becoming?" That question changes everything. Because abundance does not just give, it demands. It demands decisions, boundaries, discernment, leadership. And leadership begins internally. You may have noticed something changing in you recently. You tolerate less chaos. You protect your energy more. You pause before reacting. That is not withdrawal. That is authority forming. Authority is not loud. It is calm. Another sign of the internal shift. You no longer feel the need to explain yourself to everyone. You choose silence where you once defended, discernment where you once overshared. That restraint is not fear. It is self-respect. And self-respect is essential for stewardship. Here is a truth rarely spoken. Money magnifies whatever leads you. If fear leads, fear grows. If insecurity leads, insecurity multiplies. If ego leads, ego consumes. But if clarity leads, abundance becomes constructive. That is why God waits for this shift. This internal shift also involves redefining worth. You stop measuring your value by productivity alone, by how much you do, by how much you endure. You begin to understand that worth is not earned through exhaustion. This realization is crucial, because wealth without rest creates destruction. God does not bless burnout. He blesses balance. Another change occurs in how you view responsibility. You stop seeing it as burden and start seeing it as trust. Responsibility means someone believes you can carry weight, and God does not assign weight lightly. Wasek. You may also notice that your prayers are changing again. Less asking for rescue, more asking for wisdom. Less urgency, more alignment. That is maturity, and maturity attracts provision. And this internal shift also brings emotional regulation. You don't swing as wildly between hope and despair. You remain centered, not detached, grounded. That grounded state is what allows you to make clear decisions under pressure, a requirement for handling increase. Let me be clear, this shift does not make you less human. You still feel, you still hope, you still care deeply, but you are no longer ruled by reaction. You respond, intentionally. Another important marker. You stop romanticizing struggle. You no longer believe suffering proves worth. You understand that hardship taught you, but it does not define your future. That belief frees you, because some people unconsciously reject abundance out of loyalty to their pain. You are being released from that. The internal shift also involves permission. Permission to receive without guilt, to rest without apology, to grow without shrinking yourself for others. This permission does not come from people. It comes from alignment. God is not preparing you to be flashy. He is preparing you to be stable. Stable people build. Unstable people consume. And God entrusts builders. If you feel calmer than you used to, even without answers, that is the shift. If you feel less reactive, even when uncertain, that is the shift. If you feel less urgency to prove and more clarity to choose, that is the shift. This internal realignment is subtle. There is no ceremony, but once it settles, things move, because resistance has been replaced with readiness. External wealth responds to internal order. When your inner world becomes organized, priorities clear, values aligned, identity grounded, external systems align naturally. Opportunities connect. Timing accelerates. Provision flows. Not magically, logically. This is why everything you've been through mattered. It wasn't just to test you. It was to shape you into someone who can hold what's coming. In the next chapter, we will confront a difficult truth. Why not everyone is meant to become extremely wealthy, and why understanding this protects you from comparison, resentment, and self-doubt. This chapter will bring relief. Stay with me. Why not everyone is meant to become wealthy? This truth is difficult, Not because it is harsh, but because it challenges comparison. Not everyone is meant to become wealthy in the same way. Not everyone is meant to carry the same level of financial weight. And that does not mean some lives matter more than others. It means assignments are different. Many people assume wealth is a reward. It is not. Wealth is a responsibility, and responsibility is distributed according to capacity and calling. Some people are called to nurture, some are called to heal, some are called to teach, some are called to protect, and some are called to resource. Each role matters, but not every role requires wealth. This misunderstanding creates deep frustration. People look at others and think, why them and not me? Why do they advance while I struggle? But comparison only hurts when you misunderstand purpose, because you cannot measure your calling using someone else's assignment. Here is the truth that sets people free. God does not choose wealthy people because they want money. He chooses them because their assignment needs funding. That is the difference. Some people are meant to influence through presence, not provision. Others through compassion, not capital. But those chosen for wealth are chosen because what they carry cannot move forward without resources. That is not favoritism. That is function. You may have noticed that money has always come with pressure in your life. When you had a little more, responsibility increased. When resources expanded, expectations followed. That is not coincidence. That is indication, because money seeks responsibility, and responsibility seeks structure. Another reason not everyone is meant to become wealthy. Wealth amplifies identity. If someone has not resolved inner conflict, money magnifies it. If someone avoids boundaries, money attracts exploitation. If someone fears loss, money creates anxiety. So God protects many people from wealth, not to punish them, but to preserve them. Understanding this removes resentment. You stop seeing others' success as your failure. You stop chasing outcomes that don't align with your nature, and alignment always brings peace. But here is the key part. Just because not everyone is meant to become wealthy does not mean you are excluded. It means wealth has a specific role in your life, not a general one. You were not shaped for comfort alone. Your life demanded endurance, discernment, emotional strength. These are not required for a quiet, simple life. They are required for leadership under pressure. Another sign that wealth is part of your assignment. You think in terms of systems, not just survival. You notice inefficiencies. You feel responsibility beyond yourself. This is not greed. This is capacity awareness. People not meant for wealth often feel overwhelmed by responsibility. They seek simplicity and consistency. People meant for wealth feel constrained by limitation, not because they are entitled, but because they sense unused potential. That tension has followed you for years. Here is a liberating realization. You don't need to justify wanting more. Wanting more is not the issue. Wanting more for the wrong reason is. And your desires have been refined. They are quieter now, more intentional, less performative. That refinement matters. Another truth. Wealth does not make people generous. It reveals generosity. And you have been generous without excess. That is a strong indicator. God also looks at how someone handles power dynamics. Do they exploit? Do they dominate? Do they ignore? Or do they protect, uplift, and empower? Your history matters here. This chapter is not meant to elevate ego. It is meant to remove confusion. Confusion drains energy. Clarity restores it. When you stop comparing your journey to others, you recover focus. And focus accelerates alignment. You are not late. You are not behind. You are not overlooked. You were shaped intentionally for a role that requires timing, maturity, and restraint. Some people peak early. Some peak loudly. Some peak briefly. Others are built for sustained influence. That takes longer. This understanding should bring peace, not pressure. Because if wealth is part of your assignment, it will come through alignment, not chasing. In the next chapter, we will address something critical. The responsibility that comes with being chosen for abundance, and why refusing this responsibility delays the very thing people desire. This chapter will ground your expectations and protect your future. Stay with me. Before you leave, let me gently offer you something meant to support your heart. If this message brought you comfort, clarity, or a quiet reminder that you are not forgotten, I don't want that feeling to fade when the video ends. Today only, I'm releasing a special gift called the Divine Breakthrough Suite. It's a comforting spiritual resource created for moments when life feels uncertain. A reminder that God still moves, still listens, and still opens doors, even when the path feels slow. Along with this gift, I'm also opening access to a members area, a safe, peaceful space where you can receive ongoing encouragement, reflection, and support. It's a natural extension of this message, a place where you can feel understood and gently supported as you continue forward. This opportunity is available only today, for those who feel this message in their hearts right now. Click the first pinned comment to redeem. Sometimes one small step brings far more peace, strength, and reassurance than we ever expect. Receive this with an open heart. It may be exactly what you need today. The responsibility of being chosen for abundance. Being chosen for abundance is not an honor first. It is a responsibility first. Many people want the outcome. Few are willing to accept the weight that comes with it. This is where clarity is essential, because abundance does not simply add comfort. It adds exposure, and exposure reveals everything. When God entrusts someone with more, He also entrusts them with more impact, more decisions, more consequences, more influence over others' lives. This is why abundance is never released casually. Here is what many people don't realize. The higher the level of provision, the lower the margin for emotional instability. Impulsive reactions become costly. Unresolved wounds become visible. Poor boundaries become dangerous. So God prepares character long before currency. Responsibility begins with self-governance. Can you regulate your emotions without external control? Can you pause before reacting? Can you choose long-term good over short-term relief? These are not spiritual questions. They are stewardship questions. You may have noticed that your life demanded maturity early. You were required to grow up emotionally before others did. You carried responsibility without recognition. You learned restraint through necessity. That was not unfairness. That was training. Abundance requires someone who can say no when yes would be easier. Wait when rushing would feel better. Walk away when ego wants to stay, because access without restraint creates destruction. Another responsibility of abundance is discernment. When resources increase, requests multiply. People pull, needs appear, expectations grow. Not everyone who asks is meant to receive, and not everyone who receives is meant to stay. That discernment cannot be learned overnight. It is developed through seasons of lack and observation. You have lived those seasons. Responsibility also means carrying others without resenting them. When people depend on you, gratitude is not guaranteed. Some will misunderstand your limits. Some will question your motives. Some will feel entitled to your generosity. If this angers you deeply, abundance would wound you. So God checks this carefully. You have learned something subtle but powerful: to help without rescuing, to give without depleting, to care without controlling. That balance is rare, and it is required. Another responsibility of being chosen: visibility without identity loss. When your life becomes visible, opinions increase. Praise and criticism arrive together. If your sense of self depends on approval, abundance becomes unstable. So God builds identity quietly first. That is what He has been doing with you. You may have noticed that you no longer crave attention. You value peace more than praise, alignment more than admiration. That is not withdrawal. That is readiness. Responsibility also involves legacy thinking. You stop asking, "What can I get?" and start asking, "What will this build?" Short-term pleasure loses appeal. Long-term impact gains weight. That shift is not common. It is developed through experience. Let me be clear. Abundance is not about luxury. It is about leverage. The ability to create stability, remove pressure, open access, protect what matters, and leverage without wisdom creates chaos. So wisdom comes first. Another aspect of responsibility: you must be willing to be misunderstood without becoming defensive. Because when you make decisions others don't understand, explanations will not always be possible. Silence becomes strength. You are learning that now. You're also learning to separate compassion from obligation. Not every need is yours to meet. Not every problem is yours to solve. Boundaries protect generosity, and abundance demands boundaries. Here's a truth that brings peace. If God is preparing you for abundance, He will never rush you into it. Rushed people break under weight. Prepared people build under pressure. You may feel the seriousness of this chapter. That is good. Because this is not fantasy. This is calling clarity. Responsibility also means being willing to outgrow environments, to leave spaces that cannot sustain your next level. This is not arrogance. It is alignment. And alignment always requires release. Another sign of readiness. You are no longer offended when others succeed. You observe. You learn. You remain grounded. That emotional stability is essential. Sure, being chosen for abundance does not mean life becomes easy. It means life becomes intentional. Every decision matters more. Every habit carries weight, and you are capable of that awareness now. But this chapter is not meant to pressure you. It is meant to anchor you. So when abundance begins to move, you don't chase it. You steward it. In the next chapter, we approach the final warning, the final choice that defines what happens next, and why some people walk away right before everything changes. This chapter is critical. Stay with me. Before you go, please let me speak to you from the heart for a moment. If this message brought you comfort, clarity, or reminded you that God still sees you, I want you to know this support doesn't have to stop here. Today only, I'm sharing a special gift called the Divine Breakthrough Suite. It was created to bring peace, strength, and quiet reassurance during seasons when life feels heavy. A gentle reminder that even now, God is still working behind the scenes for you. Along with this gift, I'm also opening access to a members area, a safe, welcoming space where you can continue receiving encouragement, prayerful reflection, and steady support. It's an extension of this message, a place to rest your heart and feel understood as you move forward. This opportunity is available only today for those who feel called in this moment. Click the first pinned comment to redeem. Sometimes a small step brings far more comfort, hope, and strength than we expect. Receive this gently. It may be exactly what your heart has been waiting for. There is a moment that comes quietly, almost invisibly. It does not feel dramatic. It does not announce itself as a turning point. It feels ordinary. And that is why so many people miss it. This moment is the final decision point. Not the decision to succeed, not the decision to believe, but the decision to remain aligned when nothing is forcing you to. Here is the warning. Many people walk away right before everything changes. Not because they are rejected, but because they relax too early. They assume the hard part is over. They loosen discipline. They return to old habits. They stop listening inwardly, and alignment slips quietly. This is not about punishment. It is about consistency. God does not withdraw opportunity. Opportunity withdraws when alignment breaks. And alignment is fragile right before transition. You may feel tempted right now to go back to familiar patterns, lower your standards, reattach to old environments, explain yourself to people who cannot understand. This temptation is normal. It appears when change is near. Because the old life senses it is losing influence. When this final warning is about not confusing relief with arrival. Things may feel lighter, pressure may ease, clarity may increase. That does not mean the process is complete. It means the final layer is being tested. Here is the test. Will you maintain your inner posture when there is no external pressure forcing you to? Will you stay grounded when you no longer feel desperate? This is where many people fail. They were faithful in pain, but careless in relief. God watches how people behave when urgency fades. Do they stay intentional? Do they protect their focus? Do they continue listening? Or do they drift? Drift is subtle. It doesn't feel like rebellion. It feels like distraction. Another part of this warning: do not seek validation for what God is doing privately. When you try to explain an unfolding process too early, you expose it to opinions that are not aligned. Not everyone needs to understand your direction. Explanation is not confirmation. Peace is. You may also feel tempted to rush, to force outcomes, to speed things up, to make something happen. This is dangerous now, because forced acceleration creates misalignment. God does not need your urgency. He needs your cooperation. Another warning: do not return to scarcity thinking just because comfort feels unfamiliar. You may hear thoughts like, "This is too good to last. I should prepare for disappointment. I shouldn't expect too much." These thoughts feel protective, but now they are limiting. Caution helped you survive, but it cannot lead you forward. This final stage requires steady expectation without attachment, hope without desperation, faith without force, action without anxiety. This balance is rare, and it is powerful. You're also being warned not to isolate unnecessarily. Solitude was necessary for formation, but wisdom knows when to reconnect intentionally. Choose environments that support alignment, not comfort alone. Another critical warning: do not confuse being chosen with being superior. Pride ends alignment faster than fear. Remain teachable, remain grounded, remain grateful. Gratitude keeps channels open. This chapter is not meant to make you afraid. It is meant to keep you awake. Awake to subtle shifts. Awake to inner signals. Awake to responsibility. If you feel a quiet seriousness now, that is appropriate. Not heaviness, but clarity. Clarity says, I will not sabotage what I've survived to reach. Here's the truth. You do not need to do more. You need to stay aligned. Consistency now matters more than intensity. You are not being tested on effort anymore. You are being tested on stability. Can you remain centered when life begins to open? That is the final gate. If you pass this stage, and you are very close, the transition will not be loud. It will be decisive. Things will move. Doors will connect. Momentum will build. Not chaotically, orderly. See, this warning is also reassurance. You have not come this far to turn back. Awareness protects you, and you are aware now. In the final chapter, we will end with something different. Not a warning, not a test, but a promise. A clear understanding of what follows alignment and how to walk forward without fear. Stay with me for the conclusion. The promise. What happens after you accept the call? When the call is accepted, life does not suddenly become perfect. There is no dramatic explosion, no instant transformation, no public announcement. Instead, something far more powerful happens. Alignment locks in, and when alignment is secured, movement becomes inevitable. The promise is not that you will never struggle again. The promise is that struggle will no longer confuse you. You will understand seasons. You will recognize timing. You will sense when to act and when to wait. That clarity alone changes everything. After the call is accepted, peace deepens. Not the absence of problems, but the absence of panic. You no longer interpret difficulty as failure. You see it as information, and information gives you power. One of the first things that happens is discernment sharpens. You notice what drains you faster. You notice what energizes you more. Decisions become simpler, not easier, but clearer. You stop negotiating with what you already know. That saves time. That saves energy. That accelerates movement. The promise also includes rest without guilt. You no longer feel the need to prove your worth through exhaustion. You understand that rest is not avoidance. It is maintenance. And a well-maintained inner world sustains growth. Another thing that happens: opportunities begin to feel recognizable. Not exciting in a chaotic way, but familiar, as if you've been preparing for them quietly. You don't chase them. You step into them. The promise includes support appearing naturally. Not crowds, not noise, but the right connections. People who understand timing, who respect boundaries, who don't need to be convinced. Alignment attracts alignment. You may also notice that fear loses its authority. It still speaks, but it no longer decides. You acknowledge it and move forward anyway. That is courage, not absence of fear, but refusal to obey it. The promise also includes momentum with order. Things begin to connect logically. One decision leads to another. One step reveals the next. Not overwhelming, not rushed, but steady. This is sustainable progress. Another part of the promise: you stop romanticizing the past. You appreciate what it taught you, without wishing to return. You are no longer loyal to pain. You are loyal to purpose. That frees you. You also become more selective, with time, with energy, with access, not because you are closed, but because you are responsible. And responsibility creates peace. One of the quietest but strongest signs of the promise: you feel less rushed. Urgency fades, anxiety softens. You trust timing because you trust alignment, and trust changes how you move. The promise also includes confidence without noise. You don't announce your growth. You embody it. You don't convince, you demonstrate. This kind of confidence does not provoke envy. It inspires safety. Another part of the promise: you will make mistakes, but they will no longer derail you. You recover faster, you adjust quicker, because your foundation is internal now. And internal foundations are resilient. The promise is not fame. It is effectiveness. The ability to move through the world without being constantly disrupted by it. Whoa, but the promise is not excess. It is enough, with purpose. Enough to build, enough to support, enough to protect what matters. You may notice gratitude deepening, not because everything is perfect, but because everything is clearer. Clarity is a gift. But the promise also includes freedom from comparison. You no longer measure yourself against others. You measure alignment, and alignment is personal. Another sign the promise is active. You feel more present, less distracted by what could go wrong, less haunted by what went wrong, more engaged with what is unfolding now. Presence multiplies effectiveness. This is what happens after the call is accepted. Life stops feeling random. Even challenges make sense. Not emotionally at first, but eventually. So, the promise is also this: you will not walk alone. Not because crowds surround you, but because support aligns with your steps. And finally, the deepest promise: you will trust yourself again. Not in arrogance, in grounded awareness. You will know when to move, when to pause, when to release, when to build. That trust is priceless. You have not imagined this journey. You have lived it. And now, you are not waiting for permission anymore. You are moving with intention. This message was never meant to rush you. It was meant to remind you. You are prepared. You are aligned. You are aware. And awareness changes outcomes. Take what resonates. Release what doesn't. Move forward gently, but firmly. And this was not the end. It was the confirmation. And what comes next will unfold naturally, step by step, without fear. Stay grounded, stay aligned, and walk forward without shrinking. You are ready. Before you go, let me leave you with something meant to comfort your heart. If this message made you feel seen, understood, or reminded you that God is still walking with you, I don't want that feeling to end when the video ends. Today only, I'm offering a gentle gift called the Divine Breakthrough Suite. It's something I prepared with care for moments like this, a spiritual resource to help you feel steady, hopeful, and supported when life feels uncertain or heavy. Along with this gift, I'm also opening access to a members area, a safe, peaceful space where you can continue receiving encouragement, reflection, and ongoing support. It's a natural extension of this message, a place where you can rest your heart and feel less alone. This opportunity is available only today, for those who feel this moment deeply. Click the first pinned comment to redeem. Sometimes a small step brings far more peace, strength, and reassurance than we ever expect. Receive this gently. You deserve comfort and hope in this season.